You wake up and go, I'm going to do one thing today that I know makes me feel good and it's going to elevate my mood. And then I'm going to do it again the next day. But you have to be willing to take like the steps. You can't like give up. I know that when I go for a run, that I'm going to feel so good about it after I'm done. So I'm going to choose today just to do that. I'm going to choose to just feel good on my run.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a new episode on the Divinely Disruptive podcast. I'm your host, Jane Powers. This podcast is all about leveling up your life and creating space to dream again. Today in our studio, we have a fierce and fabulous powerhouse in the social media and personal branding world. She's all about empowerment, and I cannot wait to share her story with you all. We actually met at a soul cycling class, so it's kind of funny how energies attract, and I truly believe the power of God and his presence. And today you are going to meet her and why I'm in love with her. Char, welcome to our studio.
Wow. How do I even follow that introduction? That was amazing.
Honestly,
I feel special now.
I got a little nervous, honestly, when I saw you, and, you know, all jokes aside, it was just a soul cycle class. We were both sweating. And I remember just putting my stuff in the locker room, and I couldn't help but notice your presence, not just your beauty, but it was this magnetic energy, and there's so many people in the room. We were busy, but just something about you caught my eye. So I just wanted to take a moment before we even get into this conversation that you are already a light. You are already a powerhouse. And off the record, we talked about how you've been here for 14 years in the city of Vegas.
Yes,
so
it's crazy.
That alone is huge. Okay, so I would love for you to share with the people watching and listening, who is Char and why Vegas?
Oh man, right? Why Vegas? I used to ask myself that. But you know, in the beginning, I had lived in Indiana for all of my life, and I was looking for change. Initially, I thought I was going to move to California. I was like, if I can just get to Vegas, then eventually I can get to California. Was the next step. And I actually started at the time I worked at a university, and I started just working out and falling in love with working out. I was going through major changes in my life, coming out of a relationship, and I threw myself into the gym as an outlet. And my goal was to find a job and move out here. And I did. And I didn't know anybody. So I moved out here not knowing a soul, but the company that I was going to work with. That's another story that I can't get into fully. It's too long, but that company didn't work out, but it was the one that brought me here. And I'm so grateful for it. And I just ended up making Vegas my home. Yeah.
I'm like, are you sure you're not like my other twin or my long lost sibling? I'm like, I've been through something similar.
Yeah.
But I think you said some powerful things right there, because I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but when I see you on social media, I'm like, this woman is a freaking beast. Not only do you carry yourself with so much confidence and conviction, I've seen you, you know, roll into a room with maybe a lot of males, and a lot of females can't stand on their own. But for you to not only have, you know, someone hold your hand, you came here with no connections, no handouts. And the fact that you already went through such an obstacle, not a lot of people could overcome a job not following through, or having a plan. And you're like, wait a minute, God, I thought this was the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you carry yourself back up from that?
I was so excited just because I felt I waited so late in my life when I finally made that move. And it was in 2010. And you know, when you're overdue, like you're so ready that you're not even scared. I left like half of my belongings in an apartment. I had left a relationship behind, and on, you know, like we're still friends to this day. So it was just one of those things where I just knew I had to go somewhere else because I wasn't going to grow there. So I was so excited that I wasn't as afraid at the time. And I literally had maybe $1,500 in my pocket. And I started booking myself off Craigslist for trade shows. I didn't even know what a promo model was. But when the job didn't work out, someone goes, you should work trade shows and events and be a promo model. And I was like, what's that? And so I had to like find out from other people what it was. And I lied and said that I had experience. And then I just started booking myself. Scary now to do that. But this is back in 2010. Still mildly acceptable to do that at the time. But since then, I mean, my work has changed tremendously on this journey. It's been 14 years now, but I had worked with so many brands and I picked up social media as a hobby. And a lot of the brands that I were working with or trade shows and stuff would find out that I was good with social media, better at the time. It's changed, right? But at the time, better than at least what they knew, because many people didn't know how to use it. And so it sort of ended up being a gateway to that later on. Yeah.
That is like a perfect example of fake it till you make it.
Oh my
right?
God. I totally faked it. So
I'm like,
I
"You
was
go,
green
girl."
from Indiana. I didn't know how anything worked here, but I took every invitation out and I got everybody's phone number. And I did. I started going out in the nightlife to meet people. I was like, where am I going to meet people? And I took every invitation out. And it's like, I wasn't there to just like party or let loose. I was there to have fun as well too. Like, don't get me wrong, went through a phase, but thank God for that, because those people that I met that year working trade shows and events and like going out, there's like 4 or 5 people. Like one of them is my accountant, super successful accountant, been friends with forever. Another one is like a real estate mogul. She owns Sin City Cupcakes, has had several different projects that have been successful, powerhouse of a woman, one of my best friends. Like the people, another girlfriend of mine involved in music was kind of like struggling doing her thing. Now she's successful in the industry as well. We all met that year and then we became really good friends. And it was a year where we were all like kind of faking it till we made it, right? We were doing the thing, but we weren't necessarily like getting the recognition, right? So
What you're saying too is very enlightening and humbling at the same time, because you were like, Jane, I didn't necessarily have the opportunities, but I went and created it. So
yeah.
expand a little bit about that. Where did that drive and motivation come from?
I grew up in a home with no support, and I love my parents. So when I say this, please, like to anybody listening, this is not a knock on them. I think they did the best they could. But like when you grow up in a home with no support and you learn how to fend for yourself pretty young, then the big things like later, they don't seem so big. And so you just kind of like learn, like I had a moment when I was really young, when I was like 11 and I was like, oh my God, I didn't want to be alive at a very young age. And then I was like, no, I do want to be alive. And I was involved in church at the time. And so I may not talk about it a lot on social media, but I give God credit. Anybody that's close to me knows that I talk about God all the time. But I went to a church and it took me a while. Like I wasn't like, oh, I believe this right away. But I started seeing some good changes in my life and meeting really good people. And thank God for that time, because I started building a relationship with God that helped me through for the rest of my life now, and wasn't getting what I needed out of my like family bond, but was finding it in church. And so when, like I said, it was weird. I remember reading a book by Joyce Myers, and I can't remember the title, it escapes me right now, but The Battlefield of the Mind. And she talked about that whole like focusing on like the good and the positive, but it was more than that. Like it wasn't just like focusing on it, but like, okay, look, this is what you have. You can either focus on this or you can focus on what you don't got, right? And I read that when I was like 13. And immediately then I like knew that I was going to just like make up my mind to have a better life than like my parents had, right? And so, it was a huge turning point in my life, and I wanted to become a missionary for the longest time. I was like, I want to travel and I want to help people. So automatically, when I was in church, I wanted to be in the missionary, but I was involved in the ministry. Like growing up, man, I had 2 jobs at 14 and on, always working. And I went to church like 4 times a week, and like that was my life. And it gave me a foundation that was so solid that even though I moved to a city by myself, I wasn't looking for myself. I was really just trying to uncover things in me and figure out how to use them. I always knew deep down like what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it would translate to until later. And it became like I said, I'll get into it in a bit, but that's how I got into what I do now. Because I was like, okay, realistically, I'm not going to be a missionary. Maybe I don't go to church 5 times a week, but there's still that stuff in me that like you can't take away. And I don't know. I learned how to be strong.
And just even as you're talking and looking into your eyes, I'm like, let me not gaze too much or I'll start crying. But there's something powerful. See, I can't even talk right now. I'm just getting choked up. But people never warned me about like the spirit realm. So
Mm-hmm.
without getting too woo woo or out there, it is real.
Yeah.
Like spirituality, whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, it's a real thing. So
Sure.
as you talked about your faith journey and your relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing, because that's a
Yeah.
very intimate, private thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very necessary we bring it up, because even for me, you know, I was sharing off the record, this podcast literally saved my life. If I didn't start this podcast, I think I would have put myself in this dark hole and just surround myself with sabotage, because misery loves company.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt so helpless. And I remember just having a moment with God. I need you to show me my next purpose. Like, if I don't have purpose and if I'm not going to change the world, then I might as well not live. But when you talked about your faith and just even growing up in the church, you lit up, like your spirit lit up,
Yeah.
but not a type of light up like, oh, I got new shoes, or you had a comp dinner. Like, I'm talking something deep.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us, you know, for people who maybe don't have spirituality in their life, why it matters to succeed specifically in the city of Vegas.
Yeah. And I think just overall, like, I think people are afraid to be vulnerable enough to admit there might be like a higher power anymore. Like, there's this weird, I don't know, weird's not the right word, so forgive me, but like there's this strong desire to be like, I can stand on my own. But then I don't see a lot of people being able to stand on their own. And like, I have zero pride in that. Meaning, I think I'm a very strong person, but I'm quick to admit that like my inner strength also comes from God, and it comes from people who are around me. It comes from making the decision every day that like, you know, look, I'm going to focus on this instead of this. It's like a deliberate choice. And like people are making choices and in this city, and they're feeling lost. And instead of just going, maybe I'll try something that could be possibly good for me out, they're willing to try anything under the sun sometimes, but that, literally everything but that. And like, I don't knock medication and I don't knock therapy. I think that all of these things can really truly help people. But if you're willing to try all of the alternatives, then why not try like building a relationship with God? And if you're afraid to say God, then just talk about like maybe a higher power or something beyond, out of this world. It doesn't matter what it is. And I'm not here to judge what that is. I think that everybody's journey there is so different and dependent upon like their own personal experiences in life. And I have empathy for that. And so I'm grateful that I was exposed to that at a young age and sort of like didn't have the internet, wasn't always distracted, didn't have all of these other people's opinions telling me what to believe or think. Like, I was able to form them on my own, right? Like, I wasn't even allowed to watch TV except on the weekends. It was like Boy Meets World on Friday night, okay? You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't so distracted. I was able to think clear. And so I think it's very important in a city like Vegas full of distraction and noise to pause and build that relationship with yourself and build it with God, or whatever you do believe in is up to you, but definitely like a higher power.
No, and even as you're talking, Char, you mentioned something really mind-blowing. I say the word mind-blowing because people are so unaware it's scary, but we're in a time where social media is truth. Social media is becoming the Bible if we're not careful. And so, you know, you're talking to a Korean military professional athlete, you know, Christian, whatever. Even I have crippling anxiety, but it's not that I was born with it. I'm just in this time where, you know, I'd be lying to you if I said I don't compare, or I catch myself, you know, scrolling and I feel so empty. Like, okay, should I dress more provocative? Should I talk about more, you know, gossip topics? And then I feel this nudge from within, you know, higher power, God, being like, this is not why I gave you this platform. So I truly believe, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a business, whether it's the opportunity to be interviewed or interview somebody, we cannot lose sight of the ultimate goal and purpose and the why. So for you too, let's just keep digging deep here. If someone were to ask you, okay, why are you working so hard? Why are you even building what you build? Like, yeah, you probably get to work with some awesome clients, but if God came on earth and said, all right, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? What would you say?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is like, I just feel incredibly lucky and grateful to be alive. And I think like just the simplicity of that alone, people forget. Like, man, you woke up today and there's a lot of people that did not. And I feel like it's such a wasted opportunity for me to be alive to not try to do something meaningful with that time. And like on top of that, like I said, I knew that I was able to sort of see the gift in other people, and in personal branding, just sort of like I was able to see clearer in other people than I was in myself sometimes, like growing up. And I would think, man, I wonder why they don't do this. Like they're so good at it. I wonder why they don't take off with this. I wonder why they don't try this out. And my brain went there. It was sort of always in this makeover mode, but not to make them over because I didn't think that they were good, but just because I could see how they could make themselves like, elevate themselves. And it's just like this hunger in me to help people see it in themselves. And like I would have conversations with people, I remember like this. And then why don't you do this? Man, I don't know. Like, I just don't know if like, if I'm good enough, like if there's so many people, no. Like, look, I can see it in you. And then I took that into my work, but it happened so organically. It wasn't like I went out and was just like, I'm going to do this thing. People started hiring me before I was ready to be hired. And it turned into like sort of making over like social media pages. But then my love came into the personal branding, the human connection. Not just branding in general. Like I don't brand products, but for example, like if you said Char, look, like I know I want to do this thing. I have it in my mind, but I don't know how to get it on paper, and I don't know how to get it to translate and connect with an audience. How do I get there? Like that's when I come in, and I just started using social media as a funnel for that. It was simply just a funnel. Like it can be used anywhere, but that's just the funnel that I grew to know, which was Instagram and other social platforms. And so like that's something that I knew that I wanted to do. Now, that'll probably change over time. Total transparency here. Do I want to spend my whole life on social media and like staring at pages all day? And like, no, but I think there will always be some of that, or I'll manage a team to take care of that mostly. And then I like the one-on-ones, and I like helping people, or even group trainings. I've done group trainings, and just watching them have the light bulb go off in their head. Oh my gosh, like you see it in me, therefore now I can see it in myself.
And even as you're talking, I am resonating with just your heart and your spirit, because if we don't have a deeper why, and I use that word conviction because it's just such a special experience, I feel like it does take your interactions to the next level. And you can just tell already if people care or they really care.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you talked about doing training, education, you totally have that heart. You have a very nurturing spirit. Even the few encounters I've had with you, well, including now and then in social media, you have that gift. And so I appreciate your transparency, because so often, even for me, if I were to say, oh, well, I'm just going to talk at a mic and just interview people for the rest of my life, maybe, but if God has other plans, cool. I think we also have to open up our minds to the other possibilities, because it's so often, I mean, we see it every day. You wake up doing one thing and then your life is just going to turn the other. You have to stay optimistic. So talk about also how mindset, helps, and even mental health, because there's no way you can believe in other people if you yourself can't even believe in your own abilities.
Right. And then kind of the segue into that about like taking on clients that I didn't feel prepared for because their success was so big, was big for me. And I was seeing it in them before myself. Like it's funny because when I was focused on my work and these opportunities to work with people would come along, I would see it in them, and they would be like, oh, I want to hire you. Oh my God, they want to hire me. Oh, and I would say yes, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. But if you would ask me outside of this, like that situation, that scenario, like, are you capable? I'd be like, yeah, I can tell you the plan. I can tell you exactly what I'm going to do. But then in practice, when somebody on the spot, it's a real human with emotions, ideas. Some of them are very different than yours, different goals, different everything is in front of you. Putting what you know into practice, and then with somebody else, is like almost like you're dating. Like you have to get to know that person and make sure that you guys are always in alignment, and that you both have the same vision to kind of like get there. And so I do have to like mention a name that was a big turning point in my, like, I would say just me going straight to personal branding only. Like I had worked with a client named Cody Sanchez, and she's pretty well known now. At the time, though, here's the thing, and this is why I wish people would understand the importance of sometimes small talk, because everybody's so busy networking and trying to get out what they're good at to other people so they can see if, oh, can you do something for me? Can I do something for you? There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not where the magic is. Like the magic is sometimes like just having a real conversation with somebody and then it kind of like unfold organically. Like, oh, wow, you do this. I didn't know that about you. And like people are so, they knock small talk, but small talk is the beginnings to deeper conversations, which is the beginnings to relationships. That's not like handing out business cards. And so all of my business is built on building relationships. And to start, for example, like I said, I was on a paddleboard. I remember in Austin, Texas. I was invited by a friend to come down and hang out, Lisa Sutton, Song Sutton. And she's like, oh, you have to meet this woman, Cody Sanchez. She's brilliant. And wasn't big on social media or anything. And I go, okay, cool. Didn't know anything about her. Just knew she was successful. But, and I wasn't intimidated by success. I have to understand, like, don't be so intimidated by success. Like, just because somebody's successful doesn't mean that you can't offer something to help them. Because like people are successful, sometimes they're successful in a specific area, but that doesn't mean that they know everything about all areas. And so for some reason I felt comfortable enough. We were on the paddleboard and I was like, after hearing part of her story, I was like, you should be famous. And I was like, you should be famous. Like, how are you not? You're like the next Gary Vaynerchuk. And then I was like, but your Instagram sucks. And like, I wasn't apologetic about it. I was just like, your social media is horrible. And I just left it at that. And then we had like a deep conversation and connection. And then I went home and then within 3 months, she hired me. And I was on a team that I brought her account from 37,000 to 400. And this was in 18 months. But not only that, she grew on all channels and she's a big brand now, millions of followers. But if I didn't feel confident enough in myself to say yes to what I brought to the table before it felt ready, like I knew that like I had it in me to be capable, but like you have to take the risk before you feel ready because you get ready doing the work. At no point in time was I ready for what I was about to do. I got ready, girl. You know how I got ready? By putting in 12 plus hours a day, often every week for 18 months. That's how I got ready. And like people just assume that they see other people and they're wildly successful and they see the end result and they're just like, they know more than me or they're better at it and they have a huge following and all of these things. And I'm like, no, like they put in the work. Now the work doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that type of grind for you, but it does mean that there's a time where you need to have narrow focus and say yes to the opportunities and quit looking them as a risk. People stop themselves from the best opportunities sometimes because they're like, what if I fail? And I was like, I'm just not going to fail. I don't know what that means, but I'm just not going to fail and I'll figure it out. And that's how I lived during that time. And it built me up for my business today. But I didn't just wake up with it. And everybody wants to wake up and feel like that they know. But the only thing that you know is that you trust yourself and your instincts to say yes and that you'll figure it out. And that's okay.
I feel like I just hired you as my mentor right now. As you're talking, I'm like, can you just keep talking? I'm like, yes, I really need to hear this. But no, I zoned out for a second because I was telling my husband off the record. I'm like, okay, like you said, nothing wrong with therapy, medication, whatever. But I'm at this crossroad where I need like an actual life coach or a mentor. And it's not about envying somebody or even comparing your journey with somebody else, but I need that kick in the butt like we all do, where we're not intimidated by other successful women. Mm-hmm. That's why you're here. Like, I look up to you and I admire you because of the way you show up. And so you highlighted exactly why I'm drawn to you, is you show up, not to say you're not always ready, but you show up even if you're not 110% ready. You might be 99% ready, which is more than average. And, you know, I don't have kids. I don't know if I will, but people always say, you're never ready for kids, or you're never ready for marriage, or you're never ready for this and that. I never actually thought to apply it with success and, you know, being multifaceted, being multi-passionate, wanting to do a lot of things. People used to shame me for it, but I'm like, no, I know God gave me so many different talents and passion, but I got to jump even if I'm not ready. So how does one navigate through life when you feel like you don't want to just do one thing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that it means you have to do one thing, but there is power in focusing on one thing at a time. Um, and I think, and look, coming from a multi-passionate person whose struggle and anxiety with making a decision on something to do, and like, I'm not like I'm not really young right now. Like it took me a really long time to narrow it down. What happened was, there was a big, also another turning point in my life when I thought at the time I wanted to do like some sort of healthy fitness bakery, and I was like going to do these desserts, and even started it and got the LLC and everything going. And then the girl that I was going to run it with ended up getting an opportunity and moving away. We were midway, and it was just an answer to me and my anxiety that maybe this isn't it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to the trade shows for now. But honestly, it took years for me to niche down, which is sort of like for people who have a lot of passions go, ugh, gross. Because no, I want to be the queen of everything. Well, you can, but if you want to create a really powerful, strong, and focused community, one that you can resonate with, you can't resonate with everyone. If you try to resonate with everyone, you're going to resonate with no one. So when you really get your message down to something that you're really, really good at, so you can be powerful at one thing, you can always add to your plate later. So like, for example, like I talk about content strategy with my clients who are all business owners, all multi-passionate. They all have several things they're interested in. And I like to include it in the content, but it doesn't change the message of the content or the focus of the content. It's just included. It's trying to include their lifestyle maybe in the B-roll or the behind the scenes or in the stories. And maybe they talk about it somewhat in the content, but it doesn't, like I said, it's included, but it's not just it. So maybe they love baking, for example, and or maybe they love sailing, and but their focus really is, I'm going to help people. I don't know. Let's say I'm going to teach them how to build a business in general, get the LLC and all that basic business builder type thing. I'm going to teach them how to do that, but I'm really wildly crazy. Like I love sailing. So then talk about it, but make them 70% of your content, make it about your business, but include the 30% and the things that make you you, because that's the unique part of you. And so I always teach that, like, how do we figure out sort of how do we meld them all together in a pot where you include some of these things that you want to in your life, but the main focus is still there. And when I talk to you or when I see what you're doing, it's very clear to me, like, that you're really good at one thing. It doesn't mean you're not good at the other things too. And like I said, some people open up secondary, third, fourth businesses, but if you will never be successful at all of those businesses if you don't focus on one. And so, like I said, I have a friend, Lisa Sutton, and she has a successful Sin City Cupcakes company. But she started out as a lawyer and then grew this massive cupcake company. But then after that became successful and she had other people running it, she got into real estate, became very successful in real estate, and started doing like an investment fund. So my point being is, like, she waited until it was the right time where it could run without her to start a new project. And so when you get these multi-passionate creative people, like myself was, we feel lost sometimes in choosing a direction. And let me tell you a book. Sorry if I went on a little long. There's this, I remember I used to write these random quotes on Facebook before Instagram was a thing, like pre-Instagram years. And I would write these little quotes. It was just like spiritual quotes and stuff that I was like thinking. And it was like my real woo-woo phase online. But people were like following me for it. And I went to my P.O. box, which was public, and I got a package out and it said, I felt like I should give you this. And it was from Dubai. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I want to open it because I don't know who this is from. And I open it up and it's a book called The War of Art. Not to be confused with The Art of War. Very different book. It was called The War of Art. And it was talking about the struggle to do that thing that you knew that you felt meant to do. Like stopping from the distractions, which the distractions could be healthy. Overworking out, over accepting coffee dates, phone calls, scrolling. I guess we weren't really scrolling on our phone as much then, and it was just talking about focusing on getting the thing that you were meant to do done and seeing it through. And this person was a writer, and he was like, when I feel inspired, at like 10 a.m. every morning when I get up to write, because he made a decision every day that at that time he was going to write, inspired or not. And we have everybody waiting to feel inspired and spiritual to get the thing done that they want to do. And then when they don't feel it, they give it up. And I'm like, whoa, there's this like misconception that you should have to feel like doing that thing every day. And these emotions are lying to you. That's not a good judgment for whether or not you should be doing that thing. Your emotions can be all over the place. It's not a good compass. Your compass needs to be stronger than that. Your compass needs to be your decision to do that thing, whether you feel like it or not. And those are the people that are successful now. The people that are going, I may not feel great about this. I'm not getting the recognition. I may not have all the follows in the beginning. I don't have everybody telling me I'm amazing, but I trust and I make a decision that I'm going to do it and I'm going to see it through, whether it's 6 months or 6 years. I'm going to do the thing. And that's the thing too, is like these journeys that everybody's on are not fast like people think. Some of them are. They've used other people's journeys to map it out. I believe in not reinventing the wheel, and I use that as well. Like, let's look and do market research. How did they do it? Let's use this shortcut. But somebody had to do the shortcut in the beginning. They had to do the work. It wasn't there. So, yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like learning to wake up and make a decision to see something through, whether you're multi-passionate or not. You see that thing through first, then you worry about the next.
No, and I'm so glad you brought that book up and you expanded. It has to be on my reading list.
Yeah.
Because, man, like this conversation's totally on God time, right?
Mm-hmm.
God's definitely using you right now, even to speak to me. So if you're speaking to me, I know people listening and watching, they're like, God, this girl, she's just on fire. But dang, so let me be even more transparent with you right now. You can ask my husband or the director producer. I will buy suit jackets. Okay. Don't judge me. I love to match. And if I mix and match, cool. But it's not even about the suit jacket. It's not even about the colors.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of hit some triggering points in my soul. I've been having these personal dialogue, like, am I worthy? Do I deserve to have a podcast? Do I even deserve to interview somebody? Even if they're successful or beyond a level of success that I may never reach.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I mean, shoot, you said it so perfectly, because sometimes I don't know how to say it out loud, but you just said it out loud for me. Me wearing a suit jacket, me kind of doing my hair, putting my makeup. It's not about trying to prove to people, oh, look at me, I'm on point, I'm always camera ready. No, it's walking into the version I know I'm supposed to be. So when you talked about that book, whether it's the writer, like 10 a.m., I'm ready to work or I'm ready to write. I just have this knowing in my knower, like, Jane, one day you will make it. Just put in the work. I know right now people are probably laughing at you. People are probably wondering what you're doing. You only have 11 something thousand followers. That's it. But I made a promise and commitment to myself, despite distractions, emotional trauma, childhood trauma, friendships not, working out, is, Jane, but you owe it to yourself. Keep showing up, because one day it will be worth it. If people wonder why I'm always in a suit or always looking fresh, because the best version of me, she's always fresh for her. If somebody wants to say, okay, Jane, we're tired of the colorful outfits, okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
So I have to ask Char, because I'm not there yet, but I'm getting healing from therapy, God, and community. But how do you silence the noise when you feel like there's moments where you're triggered, you're distracted, you're emotionally being pulled left and right? How do you block the noise?
It's a muscle that I think you have to work. And like I said, I think I was fortunate enough in a weird way to have to flex that muscle when I was younger, because I was told I wasn't going to amount to anything. And again, I didn't have somebody telling me I was going to be amazing, and I didn't have the internet promising me anything else. I was in Indiana. Like, that was not going to exactly be a source of inspiration. But I'm grateful for the humble beginnings, and I still love pieces of Indiana. I'm so grateful I grew up in Indiana. But my point being is that I had to exercise that muscle, because I knew early on, just looking at other successful people, that like there was, when I read their books, they would talk about like that being, they would have those moments where they would feel that way. And then they just started focusing on the things they were capable of doing. And you could have like 4 pots on a stove and 3 be boiling and doing well and successful, and then 1 not doing anything at all. and you just learn to focus on the 3 instead of the 1. And it depends on personality. Some of us are really like those people that focus on the one thing that doesn't feel right and perfected. It's really toxic for you to not look at it as a way to go, okay, I'm going to perfect this thing and work on it, but I'm really going to focus on the things I'm really good at and not take that one thing as a sign that I'm not ready and I'm not good at what I do. Because I think you are doing the thing and you're like there, your emotions haven't caught up with the fact that you are doing the thing and that you're there. And again, I work with people and my goal is to help them grow online organically, organic followers, because I know that having a larger audience does create more opportunities, but it's not the only thing that creates opportunities. I see people that are wildly successful that have no followers. So this idea that you or anybody else isn't successful because you don't have 100K on up followers, it literally blows my mind because I'm on the other side seeing it, seeing all the clients come through, the people that I've coached or talked to, and I'm like, no, you're like already successful. This is just gonna be bonus. Like you're making connections and changing people's lives day to day. Why does it have to mean that you have a large following? It doesn't. That's going to be bonus because it's going to open up more doors and opportunities. So when you go to grow a personal brand and you go to grow your business and you teach it like, no, I know that I need to get out and connect with humans. I need to build relationships. I need to work within my network to see how we can work and help each other grow. And then you go online. Going online should be bonus. It should not be the only starting point. And so it kind of drives me crazy, just a little tangent, when people are like, I want to grow an audience. I remember I used to get these people and I'm like, why? Well, I don't know yet, but when I grow it, then, I get a following and I figure I might do this. I'm like, come back to me when you know why you want an audience, then we'll talk. And I was like, then I changed it. I was like, you have to have at least a business or some sort of service that you offer in order for me to coach you. Because I didn't want any of those people that were just like, oh, I just want a following. And I'm like, that's not how you get a following. Getting a following and growing in success is honestly like a result from, it's like not even the result. It's like a bonus to the work you've been doing already and building already. But like that doesn't equate success. And you can have a big following and be miserable and be terrible at what you do. But the person with, 500 followers, and those 500 followers are doing something with what they're learning, and they're going out and they're actually having an impact on the people that are following them, you are more powerful than the person with 100,000 followers that can't even sell a course or t-shirt to save their life, which I've heard before. Millions of followers couldn't sell 20 t-shirts. It doesn't even matter about the t-shirts. My point being is like, again, it doesn't mean success. It's literally bonus.
No, and the wisdom you're sharing right now, especially as an expert in personal branding, I feel like it's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Like not just with me, but people listening and watching, because if I feel, moments of feeling stuck in this social media world or online presence, I know people watching right now, they're like, oh my God, Char, okay, so you're saying there's hope. There's hope for people that maybe have 5 followers, but I'm putting in the work. And it makes total sense, because the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Disappointment, if you will, is when you find people online and you focus on their image online and then you meet them in real life. There's no spark. There's no life. And so you and I were blessed to not have, Photoshop or Facetune and still look this good. God is good. We are so blessed that we still have that beauty, zest, and sparkle, because you know, especially living in Vegas. Again, I'm not talking about anyone specific, but it is unfortunate when you meet people in real life and you're like, oh, that's weird. You know, you're preaching about this and that, or you're showing off this and that, which again, I'm all about social media presence. Sure. But if it can't be translated in real life, it's just like, oh, it's unfortunate, right? You get excited, but you know, to not go too far off on a tangent, my mom used to always tell me, Jane, don't idolize people. Whether you go to church or you go get courses, it's like at the end of the day, people are people. They're all on their own private journey. But it's very refreshing, and you give us a lot of hope knowing that, again, social media, websites, Instagram, it's a bonus. Yeah. But don't forget who you are, how you show up. And I don't want to guess your age, but I'm going to assume we're the same age, young and fabulous in ages. Okay. But,
I'll take that. I'll take your age.
Okay. We're not in our 20s anymore. But with that said, all I'm going to say is we're in a prime divine age group where we understand old school marketing, but also the new age. We get it. But I love that you're taking time to talk about these things, because I actually went through this quick little small depression because I was making friends off social media. I mean, I was new to Vegas. And so for me, that was like the biggest boo-boo and no-no. And you kind of called me out because you were talking about relationships versus networking. I don't know how it happened, but I was like, I got to go network. Let me find this girl on Instagram. She seems pretty cool. But it's like I had no substance in who these people actually were. So I would love for you to expand on that too, is like, how do you coach and teach people, like, focus on how you show up in the community as well as show up online?
Sure. And I also want to expand this to say, like, as you get busier and busier and more successful, like, your time is limited and it's nearly impossible to have like full on relationships. So I want to clarify that. But what I mean is just that when you come into it, like, meaningfully connecting as best as you can, hectic days, bad days, look, we're not like living in a fairy tale, they happen. But just that when you take and pause and have moments where you are genuinely connecting with people and you're listening rather than just trying to exchange information, then that's where, like I said, the magic happens. And so I think just, building the community and the relationships. Can you tell me the question again?
Yeah. No, I was saying, tell us the importance of showing up in real life, but as well as balancing social media.
So if you are a part of your own personal branding, you should know that, like, what the foundational parts of that are, what your kind of content you're going to put out. You should be connected to that. You shouldn't be just cranking out content and then with no direction, and you should know where you want to head. And so, I'm speaking from my clients and coaching perspective, but the only way people are really successful in the long haul is if they are connected to what's happening online. And then when you're connected to, like, what you're doing online and you're focused on actually creating good content that you think is useful for your audience, not just content you want to put out, when you pay attention and listen to your audience and focus on building a community, then when you're offline, it shows. And you have the difference between the people who are just there to grow an audience to monetize. They're standing in front of the Lamborghini and they're selling them a course, one that's rented that they don't even own because they feel like that's showing people that they're wealthy, versus the people who aren't doing that. They're actually spending time in the DMs or on calls or in a community, really trying to help them grow, online and offline. They are the person that they're presenting themselves to be, whether it's clean cut or not. And I want to touch on that too, because I'm not saying all of my clients are motivational, inspirational type people. Most of my clients actually are men, and not that they can't be either. But my point being is, like, and they're not always clean cut, and some of them have controversial ideas. And I actually embrace that, but they are those people offline. And so I'm not here to judge and have to agree with every viewpoint that you have on and offline, but just be that person. Like, be the person that you're presenting yourself to be online. And if you're confused why you can't grow a community and be successful online, it's probably because you're not actually the person that's putting out the content. You're just cranking out content, hoping that there's a result from that.
No, I really love that. Sorry if I confused you. I'm just like trying to figure out this gap, because even me navigating in this world, like, I grew up totally detached. I grew up playing golf. So I was just like in nature. And I told you I'm from Seattle, Oregon, California, Denver, like very hippie nature.
Yeah.
And so trying to navigate now and be successful and have an online presence and show up in the community. I mean, these are questions I legitimately want to know as well. So I'm glad you took a moment to dive over there. And I love that you embrace people as they are, because I also have noticed, whether it's agencies or PR, whatever, there's like a sweet spot of guiding them, right? And coaching them into a direction, but at the same time, celebrating who they really are.
Yeah.
Like, I will always want to be quirky, eccentric, flamboyant, but very much like spirituality. And I'm going to talk about God. It's not supposed to be, offensive. Like, if you're offended, that's not my point.
Sure.
And so I love your stance on what you do. I can see that's why you're successful. So as you grow your business, or anyone who wants to kind of get into what you do, I'm curious too.
Yeah.
How do you stand out? Because just even as you're expanding your intelligence, like it warms my soul that you're able to show up in such a convicted way. And I'm blessed by you, because the fact that you're like, well, Jane, I grew up in a place where nobody believed in me. Nobody cheered me on. Like even that reality right there, people can't imagine, because they see confidence, they see beauty, they see fit women. We all do this. Like, oh, she probably had it easy. That says so much about you and giving people that maybe didn't grow up with all the support that you believe in them and that they can. So tell me what it's like to navigate in your industry in Vegas and stand out.
There's a lot of people that do what you do, but the way that you deliver your own personal message or deliver what you do is your own personal way of doing things. It's like your personal connection to your work. And how I stood out was, actually, I kind of did the reverse of what most people in my industry do, like the Instagram experts, personal branding coaches. Most of them focused on creating content, like hammering it out for 6 months, and then building up a following and then monetizing it. And I went a different direction. I actually let my social media kind of like pause, and then I focused on building my clients, and then I let the work speak for itself. And then in exchange, they sent me more clients. So, for me, I'm going to tell you, let your work speak for you, go the extra mile. Just, like I actually under promise and over deliver, and I don't promise things I can't deliver on. So like, I knew there were red flags, and people would say to me too, like, this is the only way you can do this. No, there's not. There's like 100 different ways you can do this. You just figure out which path is best for you. Like there's so many ways you can grow yourself. I mean, there's common things. There's common rules of thumb, right? Like you gotta be consistent. You gotta have a clear message. You gotta have, there's certain things that yes, you have to have, but there's a lot of different paths to that still. And so for me, like I said, my path was letting my clients' work speak for themselves. And in exchange, I built my entire business on referral. Never had an ad, never sent out any emails. It's embarrassing, but I've actually never even sent out an email. And I was able to build a business on it the last few years. So, if you want to do this, then just focus on how you deliver your twist to it, your message with it, how you connect and build your own community. But don't think you need to reinvent the wheel to be good at something, because you don't. Everybody has something to offer. A lot of it's the same thing and it's needed, but there's somebody that's going to connect with your message more than another's.
No, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing. And man, you kind of brought up a couple nuggets of gold, if you will, right? Giant nuggets of gold. But it's interesting. When you were talking, I don't know, I thought about two different theories here. It's like reverse engineering, but at the same time going against the grain. So I like that you were like, no, Jane, I actually kind of grew it in a different way that most people don't. Is there something powerful in simply showing up and doing the work? I feel like everyone, especially YouTube University, whatever you want to call it, people want instant gratification, instant result. I was a makeup artist for MAC and beyond for many, many years, and I'm guilty of it. That's why I fell in love with makeup. I do the job. They look fabulous. They look better than they started. Boom, done.
Yeah.
I get paid. Goodbye. On to the next client. But as I mature and as I grow as a human, I'm realizing life can't always be that way. So whether it's real estate, whether it's branding, whether it's helping people with social media, if you get lucky, sure, you'll see huge change tomorrow. But that's not really the realistic, expectation of life. And so there's something to be said about do the dang work.
Yeah.
Because, I sound like an old fart, but these kids these days, right? They want a promotion.
Right.
They want more money. They want to be a marketing director. It's like, what kind of experience do you have?
Sure.
And so, humbly, I left corporate America, and it's really put me in a different frame of life. And I realized to be successful, you have to put in the work. There's no other way.
Yeah.
Like you have to put in the work.
You want to put in the work. You want to learn from other people who did it as well. Like look at what they did. and create a roadmap from somebody that's already been down that road. Again, like I always say, don't reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what they did and reverse engineer from that, but add your own twist to it. Like, but we need to have a starting point, right? And that's the beauty of internet now. We didn't have that necessarily growing up, everybody, but if you have it at your fingertips now, you can actually see, you can take courses free online. You can go to YouTube, you can learn and do all of these things and figure out how did they do it? So I can figure out how to do it for myself. At the beginning, it's rocky and you're not good. You have to be willing to suck to get good and be consistent and see it through. And this whole like needing it to happen fast is just because we see it. And in our brain, we see all these successes. We think that it happened fast because all we see is the end result. But we don't get to see all that journey there. But there is an entire journey there. And so be one of the people that's willing to mess up. Be willing, be willing to learn and not be afraid to be bad in order to be good.
No, and even as you're talking, I'm like, what an intelligent individual. I feel really grateful that we're able to just sit and have this moment, because just kind of highlighting all the things you talked about already in this conversation, you also empower me to show up. Because there's people I've interviewed, including yourself, where I'm like, dang, she even took time to be here. And, when you talked about that funny joke, how you went on a little trip with your friend,
Yeah.
and then it was like a super successful woman you didn't know. That's kind of how I navigate in life right now, is I'm a new human. Like who I used to be last year, I don't even remember her, to be honest. I can't even relate to her. But this new version of me, I'm listening to my intuition, and I'm listening to how my gut feels. And especially people who have severe anxiety, obviously we don't show it, but it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But when I met you, it was this like familiar face, familiar spirit. And I know that I'm in the right room when I feel that. And so I realized anxiety doesn't come from God. Like nobody was born on this earth to be suicidal and severely depressed and severely anxious. I feel like that is actually an alert from our soul to be like, okay, hey, something's off. Like you need to deal with it, or it's going to fester into something bigger. So without shedding too many tears today, for those right now listening and watching, like I'm inspired, I'm uplifted, but for somebody who has, crippling anxiety, I know people want to throw that out there all the time. Oh, I'm anxious. But people have anxiety. It's not funny. It's not a joke. Like there's days I don't want to get out of bed. How can you encourage them? Like, it's going to be okay. What do you say to that little girl or little boy, or even fully grown man and woman being like, I don't want to get up out of bed today. I don't want to tackle my dreams today.
It's a step at a time. You don't wake up feeling good by making decisions. Like you don't go, okay, I'm going to feel good today, and then I feel good. You wake up and go, I'm going to do one thing today that I know makes me feel good, and it's going to elevate my mood. And then I'm going to do it again the next day. And then I'm going to add to my plate the next day something that I know will make me feel good. And then I'm going to do it the next day. But you have to be willing to take like the steps. You can't like give up. Meaning like, for example, like let's say I know that when I go for a run that I'm going to feel so good about it after I'm done. So I'm going to choose today just to do that. I'm going to choose to just feel good on my run. And like any other muscle you exercise, if you can just commit to just feeling good for a short time. Like I remember I went through a time where I was super miserable. I was like heartbroken. I've gone through a breakup and I didn't know who I was, and I was completely lost. And it really wasn't that long ago looking back. I mean, this is probably like 5 years ago. And I was like, I was crying my eyes out. And I remember being a friend saying to me, you need to schedule a time when you're not like crying. That's it. 1 hour a day, you don't cry. And I was like, it stuck with me. And I actually put that into practice in other areas. And I was like, okay, during that 1 hour, I'm going to do something I enjoy, whether it's watching a movie or it didn't have to be productive. I just needed to feel good for a minute, doing something that I knew was good for me, not drinking. Like I enjoy a good drink, and I'm not going to lie, but that's not the point. Like when I'm already down, that's not going to make you feel good, right? Not for long. So I was just doing stuff that I knew made me feel better and progressive a little each day. A lot of people go into depression because they don't feel like they're progressing and they don't feel significant, and they're looking for significance in the wrong things. and they're not trying to do something that challenges them and encourages them to progress, and they feel very stagnant and they feel like unmoving water. So if you can just get the courage to get up and just, again, try something new that shakes you out of your zone, an unfamiliar place to do something that you've never done before, it can awaken certain parts of you. And then also, if you just commit to doing one thing physically, getting your body moving, which we know releases endorphins each day, that's just a small step, but it's a step. And then over time, 3 months down the road, you've taught yourself to feel good just for a couple of hours a day. And maybe it goes up to 3 or 4. Maybe it goes up to 5 or 6. But like, you learn by taking yourself out of it. You can't go from being miserable. I remember Tony Robbins talking about this too. You can't go from being miserable to happy, depressed to happy. So you take a small step, and like, that's the small step. So you can get up there. And it doesn't mean that you don't know how have bad days, but you do learn. And I have learned to not rely on my emotions, like I said, to be my compass as to how I'm really doing. They do lie to me sometimes. It doesn't mean that I don't listen to them or lean into them at all, but I do not let them control me anymore.
Like, you must be an empath or a psychic. I'm like, do you really need to read me right now? I'm like, okay, thank you, Mom. No, but dang. So when you talked about doing something good and not always productive, like workaholics, overachievers, Capricorns, whatever you want to call them, you're speaking to me. You're speaking to them. Because I know people listening and watching right now, they're like, what do you mean? I have to feel like I'm productive. But you hit it on the head, because I have days where, I mean, maybe you can see it even in the few encounters you've had. I always have to have like a timeline, an agenda. I have to be the next level all the time. And it's the athlete in me. But shoot, you definitely called me out right there. I don't think a lot of people are taking conscious time to literally be like, I'm thirsty, I'm going to go drink some water just for the sake of my thirst. Mm-hmm. Or I like fresh fruit, so I'm going to go to the farmer's market to simply get some fruits. I always feel like I have to achieve something or perform something. And again, that's child trauma, but we'll save that for another day. But I love that you're inviting us, inviting me right now to be like, hey, some days, especially when you're in that funk or you're just going into moments of depression or overwhelmed anxiety, because it happens, is just do one little thing for you, right? One little thing that makes you feel
and not
good.
Feel guilty for it. I work for, like I said, overachieving type personalities, and they work themselves to death oftentimes. And I love how inspired I am by their success, which is 7 to 8 figures up, but I also like my own success, and I like my peace, and I'm okay with getting lost in a cabin for the weekend and not accomplishing or achieving anything. Life is not a checklist. And like, this idea that it's only worthwhile if you check something off. Like, I let go of that maybe from age the last few years, but I realized I'm like, I have to enjoy my life too, like, and not feel guilty that I'm trying to enjoy it. And I don't now. Now I do have times where I sign off on my phone and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it today. I'm not going to make everybody happy, but I'm going to make me happy. And I need a minute to myself. And I take more of those moments to myself, and I do things that aren't necessarily catapulting me up in my business. And I'm not sorry, and I don't apologize for it. And I love every bit of it. I don't care if it's online shopping, dressing really, really nice and going to happy hour somewhere or in a nice dinner after. I don't care what it is. I enjoyed it, and I am not sorry. And I don't buy into all of the messages online that like, you went out tonight, you're not successful, and you're not on the grind. I look at those people, and most of them are miserable. I don't want your life. I'll take $500,000 less when I reach that point, or millions less to reach that point, just to be successful and be happy. And so, but again, like, I've done a lot of personal growth. It's taken a lot of learning along the way. I don't know that you can, I don't know if that's just something that it takes sometimes, or it's moments that happen in your life where you realize that. But I just realized that like, life on here can be a blip. And what if we're not promised tomorrow? So what if somebody who's 25 is grinding away to be successful so that for the next 5 years, but they only get to live to be 26? Those 5 years don't matter. Did you enjoy the journey? Because like, we're not promised for you to get to grind those next 5 years. And when I realized that, how important it is to also have relationships in your life that are meaningful to you, where you're not just in a room full of entrepreneurs, but you're really connecting to people that you truly love, then I adjusted my circles to match what I value.
No, very powerful. Man, so not only do I need you as a mentor and friend, I was like, that was amazing. What can the viewers, expect out of you, or, how can we support you? Because you're incredible, you're gifted, you're talented, but more importantly, I can sense like you're walking in your magic, you're walking with alignment. So please share, like, what can we look forward to?
Yeah. So, I did for the people who struggle narrowing down their passions, because I'm that person still sometimes. Look, I'm not going to lie. I have my days where I'm like, oh, I really want to do this other thing too. No, see this thing through and then do that. But I created a free guide. It's called Your Niche Guide. Your Niche Guide. No. It's 10 steps for you to kind of discover also like the business aspect and then the personal aspect, and kind of meeting them together so that way you can figure out what niche works for you to build you up as a personal brand. It's on my Instagram, link in bio. It's Brand Social Consulting, at Brand Social Consulting. Download it if you're struggling. The War of Art was a great book too. I feel like that coupled with my free guide is like freaking like would be amazing. Didn't even think of that. But just try to narrow your focus and cut out all the noise. Quit surfing the internet unless it's people that you are learning from, and get rid of the shiny object syndrome. There's always something new I have to know. No, learn from one person for a minute. How did they do it? Put it into action, and then learn from another. Put some of what you learned from there in action, and then keep learning. And so, but as far as like working with me, like I offer coaching, which is longer, and I offer consulting, which is like shorter. And I will be rolling out a course. So look for the course. And it'll be, one is going to be on teaching people how to use AI to reduce their time creating content and building a personal brand. I just think it's one of those things that people don't have a lot of time. Yeah. And I wish I would have mentioned one more thing. You want to be successful in what you do, you're going to need to hire help. Don't try to do it yourself. All of it. Huge mistake I've made. I should have had a massive team by now. And I was doing it all by myself because I was a perfectionist and nobody could do it better than me. But that's not true. So I had to add that in there.
Mike, I'm going to have to check all those things out after this podcast. So people watching, tuning in, I will see you there. All right. We're going to compare notes. So to wrap it up, amazing conversation. Yeah. 3 life lessons you would tell your younger self.
It's going to get better. Trust in God and do what you love. Go for it. Yeah.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. All right, you guys. Honestly, you can see why we jumped into this conversation. Char, I'm so happy for our time together.
Yeah, me too. This has been amazing.
Like, one of the million conversations we're going to have. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys, please support her on social media. I mean, she's incredible. Like, the best part of life is getting to know people. Like she said, it's not just about understanding people's work or work ethic, but if you can get to know somebody at the core of who they are, like she said, just start a little small talk. It doesn't always have to be all about work. I mean, we can get work done, but if we're not enjoying life, I mean, I'm sweating over here because she's calling me out. You guys know I'm a workaholic. But honestly, please support her. We need to continue to be a light in this world. Life is so short and people are literally fighting anxiety, depression every day. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, protect your peace and keep shining your light, you guys.